The sky was heavy with dark clouds as morning crept over the upscale neighborhood of Ironvale Heights. The silence of the street was broken only by the quiet hum of Kael Dravenmoor's luxury sedan as he climbed inside, adjusting the cuffs of his charcoal gray suit. A seasoned detective, Kael was known for his control under pressure, but nothing could have prepared him for what came next. Just as his hand reached for the ignition, a child's voice shattered the calm. "Don't start the car. Your wife cut the brakes." Kael's head snapped toward the sound. A filthy, panicked boy, no older than 10, sprinted across the driveway, arms flailing. His clothes were torn, his face smeared with dirt, and his voice cracked with desperation. At his side, a lean dog with piercing eyes barked furiously, pacing in front of the car. Kael rolled down the window halfway, suspicious. "What did you just say?" The boy stepped closer, gasping for breath. "She was in the garage last night. I saw her with tools. She cut the brake line. I was hiding behind the bushes. She didn't know I was there." The dog growled low, ears pinned back. In the distance, Officer Vladek Ironfang, posted at the entrance to the estate, shifted uneasily but made no move to interfere. Kael narrowed his eyes. The kid looked like a street rat, probably homeless. But something about the raw terror in his voice felt real. "Why would you think that's my wife?" Kael asked carefully. "She gave me food yesterday. I remembered her face. But last night she was on the phone. Said you had it coming. That you wouldn't make it to lunch." A cold jolt ran through Kael's spine. He remembered waking around 2 a.m. Azrael hadn't been in bed. She'd claimed to have a migraine and went to get meds from the garage. At the time, he hadn't questioned it. But now, every detail came crashing back with sickening clarity. Kael killed the engine and stepped out of the car. "What's your name?" "Dante Grimhold," the boy said. His eyes were glassy but steady. "I'm not lying. I swear." Kael turned toward Officer Ironfang. "Get the vehicle unit down here. I want this car inspected now." The boy dropped to his knees, overcome with relief. His dog, Hades, sat beside him, silent but watchful. Kael stared at the boy. If Dante was telling the truth, then Azrael hadn't just tried to kill him. She'd planned for him to survive. And that meant something even worse was coming. Kael Dravenmoor stood frozen beside the car as Officer Vladek Ironfang knelt to examine the undercarriage. The sharp scent of motor oil mixed with the wet concrete under his feet. Behind him, Dante Grimhold and his dog Hades sat in silence. The boy hugging his knees, the dog never blinking. Kael had been through war zones and interrogated murderers, but nothing unsettled him like the idea that the woman he shared a bed with had tried to kill him. Vladek called out, his voice low and heavy. "We've got a clean cut on the rear brake line. Looks fresh. No rust. No corrosion. This wasn't an accident, Kael." Kael's stomach turned. He had hoped, foolishly, that this was just a twisted misunderstanding. But now the confirmation felt like a punch to the chest. "Lock down the house," he ordered. "No one goes in or out until I talk to Azrael." But Azrael Nightbane was already gone. Inside the house, her phone lay charging on the kitchen counter. Her purse and ID were missing. So were her car keys. Kael's mind spiraled. Had she fled? Was this her plan all along? And why? Their marriage had been cold lately, sure, but nothing he'd seen hinted at betrayal this deep. Unless he'd been blind the whole time. He walked back out to Dante, crouching in front of him. "Why were you even near my house?" The boy hesitated, eyes shifting. "I've been sleeping behind the old gardener's shed. Your place? It felt safe, quiet. I didn't mean to spy." "But you did spy," Kael replied firmly, but not unkindly. "And you heard things?" Dante nodded. "She was talking about someone else. Not just you. She said, 'He'll come for the boy next.' I don't know who he is." But she was scared. That sentence pierced deeper than Kael expected. "He'll come for the boy next." The boy? Dante? Or someone else? A memory flickered, something long buried. A name. A face. A report filed 20 years ago that never quite made sense. Kael stood up slowly, eyes fixed on the horizon. Hades let out a soft growl as if sensing a shift in the air. Officer Ironfang approached, still shaken. "She's not just running, Kael," he said quietly. "She's executing something. A plan." Kael nodded, jaw clenched. "Then it's time I find out exactly who I've been married to for the last 11 years. Kael Dravenmoor sat across from Dante Grimhold in the interrogation room at the precinct. But this wasn't a formal questioning. Not yet. The lights were dim, the room cold, sterile. Hades lay curled in the corner like a shadow with eyes. Officer Vladek Ironfang stood near the door, arms crossed, watching Kael closely. It wasn't just about Azrael anymore. The boy had said something Kael couldn't shake. He'll come for the boy next. But who was he? Kael leaned forward. "Dante, I need you to tell me everything you remember from last night. Every word." The boy's eyes darted between the detective and the floor. She was on the phone, pacing. She sounded scared, angry. She said something like, "I tried to stop him once. I won't fail this time." Then she looked toward the garage. "That's when I saw the tools." Kael felt a chill creep up his spine. Azrael wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of someone else. Someone connected to the boy. Or worse, to him. They needed answers, real ones. Kael made a call to someone he hadn't spoken to in years. Severian Blackspire, a former FBI profiler turned private investigator, known for digging deep where others didn't dare. Severian had worked on the darkest cases imaginable. Missing children, cult ties, and unsolved conspiracies that spanned decades. If anyone could read between the lines, it was him. 2 hours later, Severian entered the precinct. Dressed in a simple black coat, with silver-rimmed glasses and a voice that barely rose above a whisper, he examined Dante silently for several moments before speaking. "He's traumatized," Severian said quietly, "but he's hiding something. Not out of malice, out of fear. He knows more than he's saying." Kael nodded. "He mentioned someone coming for him. He said Azrael was afraid of that person. That she tried to stop him before." Severian's eyes darkened. "Then this goes deeper than your marriage. Much deeper." Later that night, Severian handed Kael a file, thin, yellowed, and marked confidential, closed/unresolved. Inside was a photo, grainy, black and white, of a young boy, maybe 5 years old, with piercing eyes. The name on the label sent a jolt through Kael's chest. Dante M. Grimhold, 2008. But what made Kael's blood run cold was the name listed as the investigator on the case. Azrael Nightbane. She hadn't just known Dante. She'd been part of his life long before Kael ever met her. Kael Dravenmoor sat at his desk long after midnight, the precinct quiet except for the faint hum of fluorescent lights overhead. The file Severian had brought him lay open in front of him, its pages worn and yellowed with time. Photos of a much younger Dante stared back at him. The resemblance was unmistakable, but there was something in the boy's expression, something hollow, abandoned, and Azrael's name, stamped at the bottom of the report as a junior investigator, twisted in his gut like a knife. Why hadn't she ever told him? Why keep a secret like that buried for over a decade? Unless she had a reason, something darker than fear, maybe guilt, or something worse, protection. Kael replayed the boy's warning in his mind over and over. He'll come for the boy next. But who the hell was he? And why did Azrael think cutting Kael's brakes would stop that from happening? He found Dante asleep in one of the holding rooms, curled up on a bench with Hades beside him, the dog alert even in rest. Kael didn't wake him. Instead, he called Severian back in. She was part of the original investigation, Kael said. She had access to everything. Why would she cover this up? Severian folded his arms, deep in thought. Sometimes people hide the truth not because they're guilty, but because they've been threatened. Or worse, they made a deal. Kael's fists tightened. Azrael doesn't make deals. She controls them. By morning, they had tracked down the lead officer listed on the 2008 case. A retired detective named Hrothgar Doomblade, now living off-grid in a remote trailer park near the Nevada border. Kael and Severian took off immediately, leaving Dante under Officer Ironfang's watch. The drive was long and tense. As they neared the location, Severian spoke without turning his head. "There's something you need to understand about this boy," he said. "Dante didn't just survive something. He was removed, hidden, and not by chance. Someone orchestrated this. They arrived just as the sun was setting behind the desert hills." Hrothgar opened the door with a shotgun in hand and a haunted look in his eyes. But when Kael said Dante's name, the old man froze. "Dante Grimhold is still alive?" Hrothgar muttered, lowering the weapon. His voice cracked with disbelief. Then, without being asked, he said the words that would change everything Kael thought he knew. "Azrael didn't rescue that boy. She stole him." Kael Dravenmoor stood in the dim light of Hrothgar Doomblade's trailer, the air thick with dust and silence. The old man had aged like a scar, hard, weathered, and too familiar with pain. His eyes, once sharp and relentless, now trembled as he lit a cigarette with shaking hands. On the wall behind him, faded newspaper clippings detailed old investigations, missing children, and a photograph Kael recognized instantly. Dante, barely 5 years old, standing beside a woman with her face blurred out. "That photo," Kael said slowly, "is that Azrael?" Hrothgar nodded. "Yeah, she wasn't called Nightbane back then. Her name was Livia Morel. Changed it right after the Grimhold case went cold." The words hit Kael like a punch to the chest. Azrael had built their entire life together under a name that wasn't even hers. Everything, their marriage, their trust, had been constructed on a lie. Hrothgar took a long drag from his cigarette. "They wanted that boy gone. Not just disappeared, erased. He's not some random orphan, Kael. He was part of something bigger. His father, Malachar Vortex, ran a psychological warfare program tied to classified experiments. Mind manipulation, indoctrination, the kind of stuff that gets buried before it ever hits the news." Kael stared at the old man. "So Dante's not just a runaway. He's a target." "Always was," Hrothgar confirmed. "Azrael didn't steal him out of compassion. She took him because she knew what he represented. And now that he's resurfaced, that silence they paid for is breaking." On the way back to the city, Kael couldn't get her face out of his mind. The way Azrael had smiled at him. The way she touched his hand during quiet mornings. It was all rehearsed, carefully managed. He thought of Dante, asleep in that holding room, and how that boy was a ticking time bomb full of secrets. Secrets someone still wanted buried. Back at the precinct, chaos was unfolding. Officer Ironfang met Kael at the entrance with a grim expression. "He's gone," Ironfang said. "Dante, and the dog, disappeared an hour ago. Surveillance cut out for 15 minutes. We're checking the backup servers now." Kael's chest tightened. "Someone took him?" Ironfang hesitated. "Maybe, but there's no forced entry, no struggle. It's like he just walked out." And deep down, Kael knew. Dante didn't run away. He was going exactly where he was told to go. The next move wasn't his. It was Dante's. The streets were soaked with rain as Kael Dravenmoor drove through the city in silence, the windshield wipers slicing through the downpour. His hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than he realized. Dante was gone. Hades was gone. And worse, the only security footage from the precinct had been wiped clean. Not corrupted. Erased. This wasn't the work of a child. This was surgical. Deliberate. Someone had planned it. Back at the precinct, Severian Blackspire had pulled every name, every file, every thread connected to the Grimhold case. He was hunched over a table, surrounded by stacks of yellow documents and old federal records, some of them marked "Top Secret" in faded red ink. When Kael entered, soaked and silent, Severian didn't look up. "He's not just missing," Severian said. "He's completing a cycle. One that started long before you knew Azrael. And before you knew yourself." Kael's eyes narrowed. "What the hell does that mean?" Severian handed him a folder. Inside were 2 names, side by side. One was Malachar Vortex, Dante's father. The other was a name Kael hadn't heard in decades. A name he'd buried along with everything else from his childhood. Fenrir Dreadclaw. Dreadclaw ran the same experiments as Vortex. Different department. Same funding. Same methods. But his subjects weren't children. They were soldiers. Kael's throat went dry. The memories came back in flashes. Foggy. Incomplete. A facility in the desert. Endless drills. Psychological tests. Darkness. Isolation. You were part of it, Severian said. They broke your mind and rebuilt it. You were one of the successes. But when it all fell apart, they erased the evidence. Changed your name. Buried your history. Kael stepped back, heart pounding. That's not possible. But it was. He felt it in his bones. Everything he thought he was had been manufactured. Just then, Ironfang rushed in, holding a cell phone. Kael, we got a call. No voice, just background noise. But we traced the signal. He handed Kael a printout of coordinates. Abandoned warehouse. South end of the city. Pinged just once. Dante's phone. Kael looked down at the paper, hands trembling slightly. They want me to come, he whispered. Severian placed a hand on Kael's shoulder. They're not after Dante anymore. Kael looked up, jaw clenched, eyes dark. They were never after him. They were after me. The warehouse loomed like a rusted skeleton against the gray morning sky. Located deep in the industrial ruins on the south side of the city, it was a place forgotten by time and purposefully removed from maps. Kael Dravenmoor stood in front of the chain-link gate, his badge tucked away, his weapon holstered but ready. He didn't come as a cop. He came as something he no longer understood, a man chasing the truth of his own origin. Inside, the air was cold and metallic. Puddles dotted the cracked concrete floor, and the only sound was the distant echo of his own footsteps. But Kael knew he wasn't alone. He felt the presence before he saw the figure. Seated in the shadows, perfectly still. As he stepped closer, the silhouette took shape. Dante. And behind him, standing like a ghost materializing from memory, was a man Kael hadn't seen since childhood. Fenrir Dreadclaw. Kael, Fenrir said, voice calm, clinical. It's good to see you. Though, I doubt you feel the same. Kael raised his weapon. You're supposed to be dead. Fenrir smiled faintly. So were you once. The words hit like a wave. Kael's hands trembled. The memories Severian had warned about were surfacing, clearer now. The training, the injections, the commands whispered in dark rooms. Obey. Forget. Obey again. Dante turned to Kael, his voice quiet but steady. He's been waiting for you. Not to kill you. To wake you up. Kael looked at the boy. His eyes, those same haunted eyes from the old photo, didn't show fear. They showed understanding. You knew. Dante nodded. Not everything. Just enough. Enough to know they built you to be a weapon. Just like me. Kael lowered his gun slowly. I'm not a weapon. I'm a man. Fenrir stepped forward. You were never meant to live a normal life. Azrael knew that. That's why she tried to end it before your memories returned. But she was too late. Suddenly, the warehouse lights snapped on, floodlights blasting from the rafters above. Dozens of red lasers locked onto Kael's chest. Tactical units in unmarked gear poured in from every exit. They know you're awake, Fenrir said quietly. Kael turned to Dante. What now? The boy didn't flinch. Now you choose. Run again, or finish what they started. The red dots danced on Kael Dravenmoor's chest like a countdown to the end. Dozens of masked agents surrounded him, their weapons drawn, movements synchronized and silent. For a moment, time seemed to stretch. He could hear the faint buzz of electricity in the warehouse lights, the soft breathing of Dante behind him, and the unmistakable calm in Fenrir Dreadclaw's voice as he spoke again. You feel it, don't you? Fenrir said. That instinct. The clarity. Your mind's no longer fogged. They suppressed it for years. But the moment you stepped back into this place, your programming began to unlock. Kael's hands twitched. Not with fear, but with awareness. Everything was sharper. The positions of the agents, the weight of his holstered weapon, the echo distance of the rafters. His body remembered things his conscious mind had long forgotten. He wasn't just trained. He was engineered. "I'm not your weapon," Kael muttered through clenched teeth. Fenrir tilted his head. "No, you're not. But you're their weapon. And now that you're remembering, they see you as a threat." Kael's eyes flicked around. The soldiers weren't SWAT. No government insignia. No commands being given. Just silent obedience. He knew that silence. He'd lived it. They were like him. Behind him, Dante whispered, "They won't take us alive." Kael turned slightly. "You're just a kid." Dante met his eyes. "So were you when they started." It wasn't bravery in the boy's voice. It was certainty. He wasn't afraid to die. He'd already been prepared for it. And that terrified Kael more than the rifles pointed at him. Without warning, the lights cut out. Total blackout. Kael didn't hesitate, his hand moved on instinct. In a single fluid motion, he rolled to the side, pulled Dante down, and fired 2 rounds toward the closest laser point. Screams erupted. Confusion followed. Fenrir vanished into the shadows like a wraith, his plan in motion whether Kael followed or not. Gunfire erupted as the warehouse turned into chaos. Kael moved like he had 100 times before, with precision, not panic. But this time he wasn't fighting for orders. He was fighting for answers. For freedom. For the boy. They escaped through a maintenance hatch on the east wall. Hades waited outside, as if he knew. Breathless. Covered in dust and blood. Kael looked at Dante under the moonlight. "They'll never stop coming now," the boy said. Kael nodded. "Then we stop running." The safe house was buried deep in the forest, miles from the nearest road. Severian Blackspire had arranged it years ago, back when he believed something like this might happen. Inside, Kael paced while Dante sat quietly in a corner, petting Hades. The silence between them was heavy, filled with things unspoken. They had survived the ambush. They had escaped the system. But they hadn't escaped the truth. Not yet. Severian arrived at dawn, exhausted and pale. He dropped a thick envelope on the table between them. "I went back to the original files. Not the copies. The real ones, deep storage. And I found something that was never supposed to be seen again." Kael opened it slowly. Inside were 2 birth certificates. One was his. The other, Dante's. Same hospital. Same date. Same mother's name. Kael's heart stopped. "What is this?" Severian's voice was low. "You weren't just subjects in the same program. You were born in the same wing. On the same night. To the same woman. You and Dante, your brothers." Kael stumbled back, hand on the wall, as if the world had tilted. All the fragmented memories. The blurred images of a child crying beside him. The pain of separation. The name Dante whispered in his sleep. They weren't dreams. They were real. Suppressed for decades. Locked away by the very people who trained him to kill and forget. "But why separate us?" Kael asked, his voice shaking. Severian didn't hesitate. "Because they wanted to study nature versus nurture. One raised in control. The other left in chaos. 2 weapons from the same bloodline, developed under opposite conditions. You were their experiment, and now you're their failure." Kael looked at Dante, who simply nodded. "I knew pieces. Azrael told me stories when I was little. But she said you died. That they took you away and erased you." Tears welled in Kael's eyes. "She knew all along. And she still tried to kill me." Dante stood up slowly. "She didn't try to kill you, Kael. She tried to delay you. She knew if you remembered too soon, they'd find you. And me. She bought us time." Kael turned toward the window. The sun was rising, but it didn't feel like hope. It felt like warning. "She's still out there," he muttered. "And if she's not the enemy," Severian cut in grim, "then the real one is coming. And he's not coming to erase you this time. He's coming to finish what he started." The sky burned orange over the ruins of the old training facility, the place where it all began. Kael Dravenmoor stood at the edge of the clearing, every memory now restored, every lie laid bare. Beside him, Dante adjusted the strap on the small rifle slung across his back. He was no longer the terrified boy from the street. He was Kael's blood, his brother. And today they would face the man who created their nightmare. Severian Blackspire stayed back in the tree line, tracking movement. "He's inside," he confirmed through the earpiece. "He knew you'd come. He's not hiding, he's waiting." Kael exhaled slowly, the weight of everything pressing down on him. Fenrir Dreadclaw, the architect of their pain, of the programming, of the erasure. He wasn't just a handler. He was their god. And now it was time to destroy him. Dante placed a hand on Kael's arm. "We go in together. No more orders. No more secrets." The interior of the building was frozen in time. Rusted equipment, broken lights, dried blood stains on the walls like silent echoes. And in the center, seated like a king on a forgotten throne, was Fenrir. Older now, but still sharp. Still dangerous. "You came," he said calmly. "Just like I knew you would." Two pieces of the same weapon standing together. Poetic. Kael stepped forward, gun drawn. "This ends now." Fenrir smirked. "You don't want to kill me, because without me, you'll never understand what you were truly meant for." But Kael didn't need more answers. He had found what they tried to steal, his identity, his family, his will. "You made us believe we were weapons. But we're not. We're survivors. And we choose how this ends." Shots rang out, precise, final. Fenrir slumped in his chair, stunned. No speech, no last twist, just silence. Dante lowered his weapon, breathing heavily. Kael walked to him and placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's over." Outside, the facility began to burn. Severian lit the charges, erasing every file, every room, every ghost. The fire reached the sky as the brothers walked away. Not in triumph, but in freedom. No more shadows. No more programming. Just two lives finally reclaimed. As the smoke rose behind them, Dante looked up. "What now?" Kael stared ahead, eyes steady. "Now we live."